So in the tradition coming from India into Tibet, the tradition of the Great Enlightenment coming from Buddha Shakyamuni, it's often said that he put together 4 very ancient traditions that had been remnants of the Great Enlightenment masters of the past, but these had become somewhat weakened, diffused, and so on, and spread across vast areas. And spreading in those vast areas took on particular culturalizations, but he gathered those 4 great traditions and fused them into the Enlightenment tradition that has come down from that time, known as the Enlightenment tradition, or the Buddhism tradition, Sangye Gyechö, the tradition of purifying the mind and expanding enlightenment qualities. I think in English, enlightenment is kind of a slightly obscure meaning has a slightly obscure meaning, although it is inspired by the Asian Enlightenment tradition because of the post-Renaissance, Schopenhauer and all those guys. Those 4 traditions being the doctrine of radiance from the western side of Magadha, Centerland, the doctrine of the chakra nadi, the kundalini or chandali yogas, the tantric yogas from the eastern side, in this case meaning Bengal, Orissa, and so forth. Then the doctrine of bliss from South India and lands south. And finally, the shamanic traditions of the Himalayas and the northern lands. And fusing those 4 traditions into a unified whole. So from that time until today, those lineages have been passed generation to generation. And with each generation has produced some waves of enlightenment beings. Often those lineages are taught in 3 ways, known as the Shravaka, sometimes also known as Hinayana. Hina, here meaning how to simplify our life and bring our life back to quintessentials. I think a problem with humans is that they often get distracted and have overly diversified sensual portfolios. They spread themselves too thin and get caught up in too many little things rather than focusing on quintessentials. In general, we can say that the magical display of the senses, everything we see, smell, taste, touch, and hear, combined with all of the pushing and pulling that comes from our particular kind of acculturalization, tends to push us in one way or another, so that we very rarely have a contact with the quintessential simplicity of our being. In other words, life for many people becomes so noisy, they just don't notice the silence, which is always present, which is always pervasive of their experience. So the first level of teaching, often called, or of training, I should say, rather than teaching, how to get back to quintessentials, how to get back to basics, to bring one's life into essential balance, harmony, and simplicity. So on that first level of training, we have to learn to always be in contact with our own, if you would, inner silence, our own inner place of peace. There, the big expression is, in Sanskrit, is moksha and also nirvana. How to find a place of moksha, which means freedom, to always have the mind relaxed and in a state of freedom. And nirvana, stress-free, anxiety-free, how to be beyond stress and anxiety, regardless of what is going on in our life. And thirdly, shanti, how always to be a person of peace in everything we do. Our energy is a peaceful energy, our presence is a peaceful presence. That no matter what we're dealing with, if we're walking down the road and suddenly a car hops the curve and comes sweeping towards us, we remain in a state of peace, a state of relaxation, a place of non-anxiety. And I think in the Buddhist world, we think this is a natural state. It's not contrived. It's not invented. It's something which is our birthright or our heritage. And it comes to us quite naturally on occasion. But because humans are creatures of habit, we form conceptual constructs, and those conceptual constructs basically start pushing us further and further away from that mode of being. I personally feel that it is a very strong natural quality of the human spirit, because whenever we're in a state of great danger or near death, and I've been in that situation 2 or 3 times in my life, on each of those occasions, a sense of total relaxation, total non-anxiety, total sense of freedom very instantly arose. And one of them, I was a young man walking down the road, maybe, I don't know, 17 or 18 or 19, something like that. And I hear a crash, and I look up, and there's 2 half-ton trucks flying toward me at 50 or 60 miles an hour. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm probably a dead duck. I am probably a goner. I should make my bucket list quickly. No, time stood still. And even though there was less than a second before the truck hit me, there was complete relaxation, complete peace, anxiety-free. And I looked at the truck coming toward me. And as a young man, I had trained quite a bit in martial arts, particularly jiu-jitsu. I thought, what's the softest part of the truck? So I leaned forward and took 2 steps and stretched my body out, if this is like the box of the truck at the back, stretched out from here to here, because there's no solid metal in that part. If you hit a doorknob or the door frame or anything like that, it'll be scrunch, squish, scraggle, crack, 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 munch, 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 ouch, ouch, ouch. And it caught me perfectly and hit me and threw me maybe 40 or 50 feet through the air, and fortunately landed me on my head. As an Irishman, we consider the head to be the most protected part of the human body. Anything else breaks easily. The head is, but I was very lucky. I landed in a cornfield, so there was lots of soft corn that I landed on. And no bones were broken. I was knocked out for about a few minutes. But at that time, during that experience, there was complete relaxation, complete peace, a state of fearlessness. All of those qualities we see mentioned in traditional spiritual books about the real nature of the human mind, or the human spirit, or the human soul. Another time I was on a very high mountain and started to go into an altitude problem, and my heartbeat went very, very high, and it was in my mind a near certainty that I was, what were all those things I said? A dead duck, a goner. What else? What other ones? A dead duck, a goner. Kicking the bucket. And once again, when that happens, all of the extraneous things one thinks about or worries about in life, will I pay the bills? What's happening with this? What about my health, my insurance? What about this and that and the other? All of that drops away, and one comes back to quintessential elements of one's being. And again, there was a sense of complete peace, complete relaxation, zero anxiety, absolutely no sense of suffering or panic or fear. And I just sort of sat there for a few moments and looked out over the valley and prepared to be a goner. But of course, even if you jump out of a airplane at 6,000 feet without a parachute, if your time has not come, you cannot go. And 5 beautiful ladies came strolling by and rescued me. I mean, they didn't physically rescue me, they just said hello and kept walking on by. But it wasn't 17,500 feet. And I was feeling, I couldn't move a muscle in my body. Sometimes at altitude that happens, you just can't reactivate your muscles. I couldn't reactivate anything. And these 5 beautiful ladies walked by. I mean, they did prostrations going by, actually, which sort of added to the charm. And so I thought, oh, I better try and kickstart this body. And I remember once I was sitting with one of my great gurus, Lama Tubden Yeshe, a true Mahasiddha, and he had rheumatic fever as a young man, so had heart damage on his valves. So one valve didn't work, so his heart was 2 or 3 times normal. And he went through Wisconsin in the mid-70s, and the doctor took a look and said, oh, you've only got a month or 2 left to live. And so I saw him when he came through Dharamsala the next time, a few months later, and he said, well, Glenn, I may not see you again. Doctors say a month or 2 left to live. And I came to visit my gurus there, which was Ling Rinpoche, Trizin Rinpoche, which were both of my teachers. And he said, so anyway, I don't know if we'll see you again, but anyway, if we'll see what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have in store. Then again, next year, same time, same place. The next year, same time, same place. And the last time I saw him, I went up to visit Kyabje Lingdorji Chang, the Dalai Lama's great guru, and I had some technical questions to ask him about a translation I was doing. And Lama Yeshe was in the room when I was there. So when I went outside, I went above the hill, and they said his health was down quite a bit that time, so we wouldn't be able to visit him. So I thought, well, he has to come out sometime. So I sat there for about an hour, and then he came out, and I waved, and he sort of walked over and sat with us for, well, there were 3 or 4 of us for maybe half hour, and he said, well, you know, dear, yeah, this heart, it's a bit of a problem, but 3 or 4 times now it stopped on me. And so each time when it stopped, I've just relaxed and said to it, okay now, dear, beat. Come on, beat. And each time, after saying that to it a few times, it started beating again. And I got up and I was able to go for another year. So he said, it's 5 years since they said I had 2 weeks to a month or so to live. And I'm still around. So I said, I don't know what, dear, but something's keeping me going. So on this first level of training, it's how to have a sense always of our own joy, our own spaciousness, our own relaxation. No matter in the midst of whatever is going on, no matter how noisy that is, how busy that is, how chaotic it is. And as we go through life, we'll have many times when things do get very busy, don't they? They do get very chaotic. They do get very dramatic and intense. But the very first level of training is how to always keep a grip on your quintessential nature. The Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism refers to that as the authentic nature of your own mind, how to stay in touch with your own authenticity. And what's that referring to? If you see a butterfly, it's almost like your mind flies out of your body and flies away with the butterfly. If you see a snake, your mind seems to jump out of your body and become the snake. How, in all those occasions, can we maintain the sense of everything we experience is just part of our own inner silence? It's just part of our own inner theater, part of our own inner spirituality. Some schools, like the Chittamatrans in India, they used to do this by saying, just say to yourself, everything is just my own mind. When you see a tiger, you don't really see a tiger. You see yourself seeing a tiger. So keep the perspective that you are part of everything that's going on, and you are really the eye or the calm place at the center of the storm. And to cultivate that in Buddhism, normally we do 3 kinds of training. The first is a kind of a self-discipline. And self-discipline here means trying to live a life which makes us feel happy, healthy, and joyful, and also encourages happiness, health, and joy in everyone we encounter. When we talk about the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path, we call that perfect activity and perfect livelihood, those 2 things. By choosing a livelihood, what we do with our living, something that we can feel some joy in, learning to feel joy in it. And secondly, learning to share that joy with all others in terms of perfect activity, always keeping our actions such a way that they contribute to our happiness, our health, and our well-being, and also the happiness, the health, and the well-being of others. So on the Noble Eightfold Path taught by the Enlightenment Masters, and I thought it's very cute, often on American lampshades from the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, often you see at the top, holding on the lampshade, they'll have a little 8-spoked wheel, which is actually a British copy from the days of the Brits in India, because King Ashoka in the 2nd century BC made that the symbol of his rule in India. And so it became omnipresent on everything. He put it on all his emblems and on his... Later, when India got independence from England, they put King Ashoka's three lion heads on their coins. And on their bills, if you look closely, you can see the Noble Eightfold Path, the wheel of the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, a right livelihood, a job we can enjoy and feel, and at the same time bring joy and good feelings to others. It doesn't mean necessarily the nature of our job, because actually anyone can enjoy doing anything. You know, there's that great scene in one of the Samuel Clemens Mark Twain books where he's painting a fence and tells his buddy that, you know, how much fun it is, and he's just doing it for the pleasure, and his friend says, "Oh, can I do it?" "Oh, no, it's too much fun." "If you want to do it, you'll have to pay me." "Okay." But in reality, you know, you meet people who enjoy skiing. If you can enjoy going down a hill at a very dangerous speed, wearing contraption on your feet which can break your legs at any moment. And the reality is, we can learn to love anything if we digest it in a particular way or approach it in a particular way. I remember after my training in India, I came back to Canada, and I connected with some of the Tibetans who had been brought over as refugees by the Canadian government. And many of them had been given a job in an assembly factory where they take a little electronic pieces and just assemble them, doing the same sort of thing over and over and over all day. And in Tibet, of course, life was just the opposite. It was completely diverse. You never did the same thing any 2 seconds of the day. It's a big sky and a nature living, and there's never, ever repetitive activity. And so I said to them, "Don't you find it a little bit difficult?" And they said, "Well, at first, but then we noticed it's a little bit like doing mantras." So with each compartment we put in, we go, "Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme." And at first we'd be a little slow, but then we got faster. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. And at the end of the day, we knew just how many mantras we had done, because we were paid by the number of pieces that were completed. And, you know, quite a few hundreds of Tibetans were, you know, all brought over by that one. We're all given an employment in that one factory. And similarly, I think there's very few jobs. I remember the Dalai Lama's elder brother, for instance, Losang Samten, very highly educated. You know, being the elder brother of the Dalai Lama, had every kind of advantage, you could say, after he came out into being a refugee. He could have done whatever he liked. And he took a job as a janitor in a high school in New Jersey. He wanted to live in New Jersey because quite a few Mongolians had moved there after the communist takeover. So there are lots of Mongolians which are very close to the Tibetans, and he had been born on the border of Mongolia and Tibet. And later, the Dalai Lama and the government sort of, after he was old enough to retire with the pension, sort of pushed him into coming back to Dharamsala and taking over as director of the medical university. And so I got to know him quite well at that time. And I said, how come you got a job as like a janitor? You could have done anything in the world. He said, well, you know, being the Dalai Lama's brother gets on your nerves after a while. Everyone looks at you and says, Dalai Lama's brother, I think I'll get to know him. That'll probably, then I can get to know the Dalai Lama, and maybe he'll be He says, so I wanted to kind of just have a simple life where I could wake up in the morning and have my breakfast and go to work and do my job, just do my meditations and my mantras and do my contemplations of love and compassion and patience and and just live a very ordinary lifestyle away from what I had had from the moment my brother was recognized as a reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. And he said, I very much loved that job. It was just so wonderful. I'd come in every morning and just, out with the mops and the buckets. Up and down the hallways, kids would come in and say, oh, hello, Losang, how are you? And I'd say, oh, hello, Bob or Linda. They said it was a very, very pleasant experience. And he says, and now, of course, they've asked me to come back and help with the medical college, the medical institute here. And so I pretty well had to say yes, because they said it so forcefully, and they even, made the Dalai Lama write me a letter telling me I had to do it. But he says, I think I would prefer to be back at my old job as janitor. Being director, everyone comes in and expects you to solve all their problems. You get sort of dragged into all of the kind of intrigue of like different little feuds between different doctors in the hospital. So this idea with right livelihood, of course it's important to choose something as a lifestyle that we can do. Like, for instance, if you're a 75 scrawny weakling with one leg, you shouldn't try to become a boxer. Or whatever, you should try to look at something which suits your physical, mental, emotional makeup to some degree. But within that field, it's really more a matter of learning, training your mind to be joyful and relaxed, peaceful, regardless of what it is that you are doing. And then on the second level of that training, the training in samadhi. And samadhi means mental focus. And so here they make three qualities. But most important of those is trempa, a kind of a quintessential self-awareness, a quintessential self-monitoring. That basically always being aware of what it is that's going on in one's life. How is one's body feeling? How is one's mind? How is one's emotions? Where are one's thoughts? What are they doing? And finally, training in wisdom, which in the Buddhist world mostly means trying to create a perfect balance between subject and object. Holding whatever it is you experience with a perfect degree of intensity, not too tight, not too loose. As Buddha once put it, like a finely tuned musical instrument. I think in India they had the lute or something like that. It was like a 4-stringed instrument. Often in Western translations they say a guitar, but we've always got 6 strings on our guitars. But when the mind is like a finely tuned instrument, not too tight, not too loose, then everything we experience with the right degree of intensity. Too tight, and we become anxious, stressed, and so forth. Too loose, and we become careless. We don't bring the intensity of that experience into our life. Then on the second level of training, the so-called Mahayana or Bodhisattva path, learning how to be loving with every living being we encounter, from bugs to 10th level saints, to be equal loving, to have equal care for each of them, have equal compassion for each of them, be equally joyful in the presence of each of them, which is always a little bit of a challenge, because it's easier to be joyful in the presence of someone you like than in the presence of someone you find it difficult to like. Therefore, in terms of the meditations and contemplations, the contemplations on learning how to like everyone is very, very important. For that reason, many Tibetan Lamas who travel the world emphasize the teaching on love and compassion. Not how to say love and compassion or talk about love and compassion, but how actually to be more loving and more compassionate in your life. And in connection with that, practicing the 6 paramita, the 6 gone beyond qualities, the six applications that carry you beyond. Beyond what? As human, in the Buddhist world and in the Indian world, we think humans, you're already quite far up the evolutionary totem pole. So you're already Kong, you're already a high being, quite a high being. No insult implied to any termites or other bugs that may be living in the building. But in the Buddhist world, we humans are thought to be a little higher on the evolutionary ladder and to be close to enlightenment. Very easy for us to tip the scale and just slide into enlightenment. Therefore, they're called paramitas, the things which carry you beyond. Learning to always be generous with others. Learning to always be ethical with others. Learning to always be patient, forgiving, forbearing with others. Learning to always be joyously enthusiastic in everything that you do. I like some of the tantric texts, some of the part of the sadhana after you manifest as the Buddha form, you go, ha ha. How can we have that quality with us at all times? Ha ha. If you meet Donald Trump if he comes up this way later, when do you guys have your primaries? If he comes through and you meet him, you can look at him and say, ha ha. Or Hillary Clinton, ha ha. But in the Buddhist world, we don't think you should allow these qualities to be reactive. In other words, you shouldn't depend upon something to make you feel happy, something to make you feel joy, something to make you feel good. You should learn to always be joyful, be relaxed, feel good, without any external stimulus, regardless of what it is externally. To learn to always be joyful and joyfully enthusiastic about everything. The way you breathe in with joyful enthusiasm, like whoopee. and breathe out, whoopee. So the name of a Buddha, one of the epithets for Buddha is Sugata, someone who has gone to joyfulness, gone to happiness. And it's not that this is something extraordinary. That's not like a Buddha or an enlightened being is anyone different than us. They're born human, they do a training, and they learn how to cultivate those inner qualities which create that kind of mental, emotional, cultural, intellectual ambiance. So regardless of what is going on, one presses oneself in the direction of joy. More important than what is done with that other person is the presence of joy in the doing of that exchange. If it's a business deal, joyfully doing a business. If it's having coffee with a friend, joyfully having coffee with a friend. Enthusiastically having coffee. Wow, this coffee. Oh. And the fifth one, Jian, is similar to the second in the three higher trainings from the Noble Eightfold Path. Jian there just meaning the same thing as Samadhi, except having a little bit of a wider range to it, I suppose. And finally, Prajna, again having a bit of a, much the same focus as Prajna in the three higher trainings of the first level, but having a wider range.